Welcome everyone to the 2025 Porsche Parade. What's my car worth? And we don't have a car.
It's worth nothing, Boo.
The reason why we don't have a car, unfortunately, is the way to get a car in here is quite difficult. It requires tow trucks and flatbeds, so on and so forth. So that doesn't mean we can't have the seminar and not have Nathan Merz talk to us about values of cars. What we do have is we have some photos from members that have submitted, and we're going to show them to you. And from the photos, what you can see, what you can tell, perhaps give us a value on those cars. And we have several audience members here that might want to share their car with you, and maybe you can tell them what they've got.
Well, in some ways this is good. It's not as much fun as I love looking at real cars because nuance makes a big difference on value. But it's also good because we get so many calls. So many of us are shopping online. And so much like if we're shopping online, I just had the opportunity to see 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 pictures. And so our values are going to be a little bit more broad. I won't be able to call out some real specifics on the cars like we would have if they would have been here. But in some ways actually kind of useful because it's what a lot of us are doing at home. We probably should be doing chores around the house. We're busy on our devices looking at cars. And at least in my case, my wife's like, what are you looking at? I'm like, it's work. Thankfully, my work is Porsche, so I get away with what I would be doing anyway.
So Nathan, how do you deal with, because I know I get this, calls where, you don't know who it is, but they look at you as an expert. They're just calling you, so you obviously haven't seen the car. Say, oh, I've got an 86 944. It's primo, and I'm selling it. I want to be fair. How much should I sell it for? Like, where do you even start with someone that says that?
Well, the first thing is I always recognize most of us have blinders on as it relates to our own cars, even myself, right? I mean, we are very emotionally attached to these vehicles. It's about the passion. And so I always objectively take one half step back and go, okay, whatever they tell me, it's always going to be a step back from likely what they mentioned on the car. It's a rare circumstance where someone under-describes their car. Every so often I do get it, so I always first off do that. And then I always start with that caveat. I always tell them, hey, so much of the value of a car is in the fine details. So if we're just talking about your car with a few photos or some description, I'm going to give kind of your 10,000-foot value. If you want to get really, really specific, I generally need to lay eyes on the car or at least have a complete suite of photos, some background information about service and that kind of thing to get a closer value. So these values will kind of get you more like, hey, broad market for this model, some things that make a difference in terms of their values, and then we kind of go from there.
I have an acquaintance that is selling a car, and I love them to death, but the choices that they've made on their car is not exactly what I would do, and they love it. They think it's worth a whole lot of money. They're getting ready to sell it, and I don't have the heart to tell them, I don't think you're going to get anywhere near that money. Like, how do you avoid that awkward confrontation with someone?
Well, thankfully, generally, they're coming to me for my expertise. So I've kind of learned how to handle some of that with kid gloves. So usually, I'll have a lot of those caveats in there. I'll say, hey, I'm going to share some information as it relates to the market. This is not my opinion as to, my personal preference, whether I like this car or don't like this car, or I think this is good or this isn't good. I'm just going to speak to about the general market trends. So as it relates, for example, if someone has made personalization choices on their car, generally what I'll tell them is I'll say, hey, it's your car. The passion for the brand should be make the car what you want. But if you're thinking about selling, you have to be thinking about, well, then it's no longer going to be your car. And so you want to have as broad a market appeal as possible. And so one of the concepts I talk about oftentimes is this idea that when you list a car for sale, you don't want any of the cognitive dissonance, which is where someone forms a view in their head of what a given car looks like. That first photo better look like what they expect it to look like. Otherwise, there's a pause, and that pause is really dangerous. So I'll give you an example. If someone says, what does a 930 turbo look like? Close your eyes. Okay, we've all visualized it. It's generally guards red, probably has black or tan interior. It's got Fuchs wheels on it. The photo is taken probably either from the front three-quarter or rear quarter view, so you see those big fenders, right? And we kind of visualize what that car looks like. Okay, let's assume someone personalized the car and they put on a set of polished HRE wheels. They live in Florida, so they tinted the windows and they put a stripe on it. Still a great looking car, but that's not what people expect to see when they click on the button. They go, and then what happens is they have to then very quickly form a judgment. And they do this. They go, oh, those wheels are kind of cool. HREs are good wheels. Do the original wheels come with it? Did you take it to the track? I mean, those bigger wheels, you might have taken it to the track. Are those stripes vinyl or is that painted on? Or are those under PPF? Would they come off? Would it leave any damage on the paint? Window tint, does that come off or how does that work? Right? And they're forming all these questions. Whereas if the car just looks exactly like they expect it to look like, they don't have those questions. And so if you're not careful, it'd be interesting to study the psychology of this. When people are looking at a car, they click on it, they scroll through 20 seconds and they quickly decide whether they're going to spend more time or whether they hit the back button and move to the next car. So that's kind of the way I describe any changes to someone. And hopefully most people can kind of visualize that process. So it's not to say that if you want HRE wheels and window tint and a stripe on your 930, that's great. But recognize it's going to no longer be your car.
And so from the sales side, in summary, stock is probably better.
Stock is generally better. The only time I say don't go stock, on most Porsches, there's sort of, Porsche enthusiast kosher modifications, if you will. So for example, you have a 993. Most people are generally okay if it no longer sits at US ride height, because most people find US ride height to be visually distracting. So things like that are generally okay. You can kind of do that. Or sometimes if you have a car that is already so customized that you couldn't feasibly bring it back to stock, well then don't. Like sometimes I'll get someone, they've got a car that's heavily modified, it's got aftermarket fender flares and all these body modifications, and they're asking if they should put the original steering wheel back on. Well, no, because the car's so far down a path. So in that instance, then what you need to do is you almost need to lean in hard, where that modification is, and then figure out, like let's say you've gone to sort of more of an outlaw look. Then you need to be fully committed to the outlaw look. So sometimes you'll see someone that did the outlaw look with the wheels, but then everything else looks kind of stock. Well, then I would probably commit more to the outlaw look. I'd probably go get some hipster stickers to put on the rear 3/4 window. And, if I had the original steering wheel, I might go more of a, prototipo or something that fit more that vein. So some of it's just knowing what it is that you have.
All right. Well, Manny, thank you so much for getting the collection of cars that we're going to look at.
Okay.
You ready to throw up the first one, Damon?
What do we got?
What do we have? Ooh, looks like 964.
Okay.
In dark blue, factory ride height, Cup 1 wheels, looks like newish tires, tan interior, sunroof, so it has the aero mirrors, so that means that maybe it's a later model, or they upgraded the mirrors. What are you looking at?
Okay, so let's go back to that first exterior shot, Damon, if we can. Okay, so what I can tell you about this car based on what I can see, again, I don't have a lot of background information, but it looks to be midnight blue metallic, which is a desirable color. It was a standard color on the palette. There was a slight upcharge for the metallic paint. 92 introduced a couple visual changes. The aero mirrors, which came along for 91 in the turbo, 92 on the later ones, as well as these wheels that sometimes people will call the Cup 1. These are actually called the Design 92. Porsche was very creative in this era. They came out for 1992, so they called them the Design 92. They're a 16-inch 5-spoke wheel. This was the standard wheel on this car. They also, in this year, had an optional 17-inch Cup 1 wheel. Now, this is a funny example. If I had this car would actually generally sell better on the 17-inch Cup 1 wheels. Even though they likely weren't original to this car, it's what most people prefer. And again, when you say 964 to people, particularly a late car, they visualize it on 17-inch Cup 1s. So
a little bit more details on the car. We know that it has 65,000 miles. It is indeed a 1992 Carrera 2, midnight blue metallic beige interior, 6-speed, ABS air conditioning.
6-speed or 5-speed? Should be a 5.
Oh, it should be a 5-speed.
Yeah.
5-speed.
Okay.
Sunroof, leather interior.
Okay. So a couple of other things I'm going to note about the car. I did note it did have aftermarket LED headlights on the front. Me personally, I would probably just put the original H5s back in it. Again, just for that same issue. It's what people expect it to have. So if someone's gone to some more modern projector-style headlights, this car will generally, because the rest of the car presents so originally U.S. ride height, it's odd to have one modification. So let's jump to our next photo there, Damon. Okay, so looking at the interior, it's a pretty standard build car. It's got a Porsche CD2 radio, standard 4A power seats, no sport seats, no OBC, no full computer. So fairly lightly, this would have been kind of a dealer spec car. The car presents very cleanly. It's a C2. They offered, of course, the coupes in C2 and C4, meaning two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive. In the market, the C2 will bring a premium over a C4, although the demand for 964 coupes is so strong that, for the most part, most people will, I don't like this word, but they'll pivot to a Carrera 4, even though generally the preference is Carrera 2. I actually really like the 4s. I like their sort of technological significance and their connection with the 959 program. But nevertheless, a 2 will do a little bit better. In terms of color combination, again, midnight blue is a good, moderate. It's not really a value add or a value deduct. It's kind of down the middle. However, the cashmere interior, I think, pairs well with the midnight blue. As a general rule with 964s and a lot of air-cooled 911s, think of black interior as the standard. And generally, any of the other standard choices as a value deduct. So, for example, gray would be a value deduct generally, as would cashmere, but it somewhat depends on the exterior color. Now, if you have one of the rare, unusual interior colors, any of the red or greens, those will generally bring a premium because they're so unusual. So, in terms of the general values in the car, 964 C2 manual coupes. If we talk about driver quality cars, 65,000 miles, about the bottom of the market. And what I always tell people is I always give them kind of the bottom of the market and the top of the market, and then we talk about where their car might fit. So excluding project cars, but if you have a running and driving C2 manual coupe that's generally, I'll call it passable. Not a great car, but a passable car. About the floor in today's market is about $80,000.
The base?
Yep, that's about the floor.
Wow.
Top of market, again, these are not 8,000-mile Conqueror winning cars, but a driving car, in kind of driver condition, about the top of the market, about 125 or 130 in today's market. They pretty quickly come off the bottom and they pretty quickly come off the top. And the bulk of these cars are going to be between 85, 90, and 110. And they've actually come off maybe 10% in the last 12 months in terms of their absolute values. The other thing to note that there's a large number of rest of world cars now hitting the market, generally coming out of Japan. The Japanese cars have some potential advantages and some drawbacks, and that's polluting the market values a little bit. The one advantage that they have is they're sometimes commonly found with feature sets we didn't have. So, for example, not uncommon for them to be non-sunroof. They oftentimes are a little bit more daring in their color choices. So that's probably the main benefit. The drawback, generally the rest of world cars, is they cannot be licensed in states like California because they never met emission standards in those states. So even though they run clean and they would pass, they're not allowed because they simply were never sold in that market. So this is a U.S. car, so generally a U.S. car will bring a little bit of a premium because it's got a broader market appeal.
During this generation, Porsche, I don't believe, Manny can confirm or not, they weren't doing as well as they are today, obviously.
Yeah.
And the production numbers are quite low on a 964.
Very, very low. So production on the 964 Coupe started with 89.5 with just the C4. And like everything Porsche, there's always a group of us enthusiasts that are kind of waiting in the wings for the new car. So sales in 1990 was actually fairly good. By 91, it was still kind of hanging in there. By 92, they fell off a cliff. And then 93 and 94, they would have praised God if someone came in and bought a new 911. I mean, they just could not sell these cars. To give you some idea, by model year 1994, I think total sales under 200 total units. So very, very unusual. The other thing that's interesting about 964s is that most people kind of call them early and late, with the break point being 92. So 92, of course, got the aero mirrors, different wheel designs, and several hundred engineering changes. And a lot of people get caught up and they say, oh, I want to have a late 964 because they don't leak oil like the early ones do. That's all not true. I'm here to tell you all 964s leak oil. God bless them. Doesn't mean they should, but when I go look at them, literally about 1 in 100 964s when I inspect it is truly 100% dry. It's very unusual. So what I always tell people is now that these are 35-year-old cars, don't get caught up in the model year, get caught up in the quality of the car that's in front of you. So this looks like a really good car. This car, could, if someone wanted to maximize its value, there's some dollars you could spend that would go a long way. But what I would say this car, without touching it in person, is worth somewhere between 90 and 105.
Wow. Now, these cars are a base for a car that's made into, and sometimes referred to it as the Singer effect.
Yes.
Because it's the donor car to the car that they make. So if they're taking these donor cars and make them completely different from the original and making it even more rare, do you think that drives the price up?
I think that's the answer everyone likes because it seems logical, like, hey, people are taking these cars and they're basically taking them out of circulation, so therefore there's less cars in circulation, and that's the number one reason the values are driving up. I think that's some small part of it, but I think actually more than anything, why I don't like that answer is, I'll admit it, I am 964 biased. I worked at a Porsche dealer when these cars were new. I did their pre-delivery inspections. I love these cars. I've always loved these cars, and they were not loved for a long time. And I think what happened is Porsche people are kind of funny. We're slow. We're slow to change. And it's like about 10 years ago, somebody woke up and said, well, wait a minute. Here's a 911 that looks like a traditional 911. It's got a traditional, C-pillar. It has a traditional and gorgeous upright front fenders, but yet it's got a completely modernized coil-over base suspension. It's got anti-lock brakes. It's got HVAC that actually works. It's got airbags. It's got a 3.6-liter twin-plug engine, to which I point out to people, yep, those are all the same things it had in 1990 when we didn't like it. And I think they discovered that. And I think it's a more timeless car than the 993. And so I think that's driving it more than anything else, is people are saying, I want this driving experience, a little bit more modern driving experience, but I want that traditional upright fender. I think that's driving the values more than, if you want to call it, the Singer effect. And no slight against Singer. Great product, but yeah.
Well, hopefully the 964 owner is happy with what you said. I didn't realize that base was around 80. That's incredible.
It's hard to believe because it used to be, you guys will laugh, but he's still in my local region. I'll give him a shout out. I sold a 1991 964 C2 manual coupe, guards red, black, high miles at the time, about 140 or 150,000 miles. And I just advertised the car for sale. It's almost embarrassing to admit. I had it on my website and it wasn't getting any traction. So back in, I think this was like 2012 maybe, I put it on our local Craigslist for $13,900.
Wow.
And it took me still like 90 days to sell it.
Oh.
So this tells you what a radical change. That's 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So it was the last cheap one I ever sold.
Well, that was a good start.
Yeah.
What else do you got for us here, Damon?
Stump us.
Oh, this car, we are going to completely rip this one apart. I see so many things wrong with it. Just kidding. This is actually Manny Alvin's 914.
Oh, there's so much pressure.
So much pressure.
Well, even though I don't like Manny a whole lot, I am going to be nice. he did go back one slide for us, Damon. He didn't commit my Cardinal 914 offense. He doesn't have a Porsche badge on the hood. Thank you, Manny. You passed my test. So this is a 1973 914.
Oh, he's trying to lure you with cute doggy photos. Come on.
Now, Manny, are we missing our 2-liter badge, or are we not a 2-liter?
The first 200, they never had.
Oh, the first 200 didn't have it. See, there you go. Okay, so let's talk 914s. I really, really like 914s, much like 964s, 914s, because they were the entry-level Porsche at the time. They didn't ever get viewed in the same vein as the 911. This is sort of a common theme with Porsche. For whatever reason, whenever there's a more entry-level car from a price point perspective, people seem to allude that to it's somehow less than a full Porsche, which is absolutely not true. I don't care. You name your entry-level Porsche over time, it's not less than a full Porsche. It's a different Porsche. To me, a wonderful car. So debuted in the U.S. in 1970, and in 1970 through 1972, we also had a model called the 914-6, which used a 110 horsepower detuned 911T motor, carbureted car. And in 73, the 6 went away, and they introduced a new model called the 914 2-liter. They made right at 100 horsepower, so they were down only 10% from the 914 6, but they were lighter. I think they're absolutely fabulous. What they did on the 73 14 2-liters is they made them kind of a all-inclusive package. So with these cars, you got the chrome bumpers, you got front fog lights, spoiler, alloy wheels, you got the sail trim, and then on the inside, you got the center console and the gauges. They're a really, really great car to drive. If you have not driven a 914, I would absolutely encourage you to drive one. And again, oftentimes with entry-level Porsches, these were inexpensive when new and became very inexpensive back in the day. And so not many good ones survived. So looking at these photos, the thing I can tell you about this car, I believe this car is Phoenix Red.
It is?
Phoenix Red is kind of an orangey red. It's a really good color on these cars. They generally do best in a bright primary color. So if you're looking at a market, you're going to want something in the orange, blue, yellow, or green vein from a valuation standpoint. In terms of value for the 4-cylinder cars, the pecking order sort of goes 73 914 2-liter is viewed at the top, then followed by the 74. Then it gets a little convoluted. The 75 and 76 are mechanically the same, but they got larger bumpers. They actually are the best driving of all of them, but they have they fall off the cliff because the bumper design is not generally viewed
What's
as
different
favorably.
about them that makes them a better driver?
They're just more developed. They also move the fuel pump up front so they don't vapor lock. They're just, with Porsche, they're constantly making, if you look like at the history of these cars, they make dozens of really small changes. And each one of those things is just things that they learned, whether because they got warranty complaints or they were getting feedback and just along the way. So as a general rule with Porsche, the later in production a car is, generally the more sorted out it is. But 73s are really, really good cars. So let's talk values. So much like we did with the 964, so let's talk bottom and top. So we're going to exclude any 914 that we're going to view in sort of the project status or anything that's not fairly original. So I'm going to define fairly original as a car that still has its injection system. That's valuable. Is generally fairly rust-free. There's likely no such thing as a completely rusty or non-rusty 914. And so we'll lump together for now the 73 and 74 2-liter cars. About the bottom for a running driving car with its original injection that's palatable is somewhere in the $22,000, $23,000 range. That's about the bottom. Top of world, our world record prices on these cars, and again, we're not going to talk about the 0-mile cars. There's been a few 0-mile cars sold, but for ones that have some miles that are really, really good, about top of market, $70,000 or $75,000 is kind of about where they've been. For example, one of our long-term, dear friend of mine, long-term club member, Alan Caldwell from Seattle, long-time member of the tech committee with me. When he passed away, his car sold, thankfully, to another club member, local to me, on Bring a Trailer. I think it brought $63,000. So with the fees, $66,000, $67,000. It was yellow, original owner. It needed a little bit of reconditioning from sitting, but condition-wise was great. This car looks ready to go. It looks quite original. I know Manny still uses the car. So I think this is probably going to do at the upper end of the range. Now, the market's cooled a little bit from that peak. So right now, peak on these cars has come down maybe 10 or 15,000. So I think this car, if it went to market today, would probably do somewhere between $60,000 and $70,000.
And this car I know has a great history at different concours. Actually, at a parade concours. I think it took top of show in preservation.
Yeah.
So does that add value to the car when you?
It absolutely does, particularly in the audience if people know what that means. Funny enough, we had only, I think, 10 preservation cars at Parade this year, 2 of which were 914s that were spectacular. Now, interestingly enough, neither of those cars, and not denigrating because they were amazing cars, I was thrilled to see them, neither of those 2 cars were 73s nor 2-liters. And so this is kind of, if you're looking for a 914, if you're excluding the 6s, which have their own market space, and for the record, I think a 914 2-liter is a better car to drive than a 914 6.
Is that right?
914 6 is cooler, But a
As a
914
driver.
2-liter to drive, wonderful. But I think this car would do really, really well.
No, I think you made Manny pretty happy.
Yeah. Yes. Dang it. He knows. Okay.
Very good.
What else we got?
What else do we have, Damon? Ooh, the 996, not only 996.
Ah,
but
996. So
Turbo.
very close to my heart. I bought my 996 Turbo to Parade this week. I also won in my class. It was a hollow victory because no one was in my class. It was very sad. We actually just made 996s eligible for preservation class this year. And so I wanted to show my car. I really like originality, and so it was kind of fun to do that. But looking at this picture, it's a little hard to tell, but I think this car would be Orient Red Metallic, which is a really, really good color for this car. You want to read us
I think we do have some details here.
Yeah.
All right, we do. You're right. This is a 2003 911 Turbo Orient Red Metallic with natural brown leather, the soft ruffled leather seats. Let's see, large leather package. It has the X50 Performance Kit, X54 dual oval tailpipes, CD changers. Let me see anything else.
What's mileage?
Mileage. I don't know that. 42,000 miles.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's talk 996 turbos. We do have a fabulous video. Of course, I'm biased. I made it. But on our PCA YouTube channel, I like these cars a lot. I think they represent one of the best values in the Porsche market. Not that they're the least expensive entry into the brand, but they offer the most performance for the dollar of anything you can buy. And they're also probably the most reliable model at that price point with that performance potential. So if there's any place to enter the brand, or you're thinking about going with a more classic Porsche experience, I'm in big favor. So they made these cars from 2001 until 2005. If we're looking at market space, the market views those years, for the most part, fairly interchangeably. There are some important differences. You can watch the video. 2001 is the biggest sort of standalone year. They made a lot of updates in 2002. And the later they go, the lower the production numbers are, but not radical change among the years. So year doesn't make such a difference. They came both coupe and cabriolet. You only want to look at coupes for values. The cabriolets trade at a significant discount. Again, so if you really want to talk about a value, buy one of these in an open version. But for a closed version, we've now entered the period of time where options start making a big difference. In years past, the Porsche option list was nowhere near as deep as it is now. This was sort of that first part of the era where Porsche was starting to introduce big and expensive options. So you mentioned a couple of them. The X50 Power Package, I think at the time, was a $17,000 option. It gave it, instead of the K16 turbos, it gave them K24 turbos, different intercoolers, slightly stronger transmission, different software tuning. And so they picked up a whopping 30 some odd horsepower. I think it's radically overrated, but in the market, the X50 cars bring a little bit of a premium. Color, again, makes a big difference. Orient Red Metallic. These are not great pictures. The color rendering doesn't make this look
pink.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a fabulous color in picture. This may just be our monitor.
And what you were saying earlier, a good photo is very important when you're selling
Yeah, and this
a car. The first video, photo,
Yeah.
I saw it, it made me cringe a little bit.
this kind of looks like a color Chrysler would have painted a minivan in like 1992 or something.
Raspberry. I think it was called Raspberry.
Raspberry, yeah. Or I think my grandparents had a Taurus in this color.
It's the TV. It's not the photo
yeah,
submission. It was the TV.
But the other thing you mentioned to me too is I think you mentioned it has natural brown interior.
Yes. Supple leather.
Okay, so not to get too awkward with you, Vu, but if an interior can be sexy, natural brown.
I agree.
So good.
Absolutely.
It's a warm kind of somewhere between a peanut butter and a chocolate kind of color. And it just has a warmth to it, and it's much better than the standard Savannah Beige. Savannah Beige is not my favorite. So they more commonly would have Savannah Beige. Natural Brown was a much more premium color choice. I think it was $3,200 extra to get Natural Brown. So whoever ordered this car, it was more expensive to begin with. The car presents like it's fairly original. The mileage is kind of that sweet spot of not so low, you're paying a huge premium for the mileage, but not so high, you're starting to get concerned. Now these cars are interesting. Forever and ever and ever, 996 turbos were worth $40,000, give or take. And then the world kind of discovered them and went, whoa, this is a really great car. And prices, particularly during COVID, went kind of nuts. And there was a period of time where pretty standard 996 turbos were like knocking on the door of $100,000. Well, I never thought that was sustainable. I think maybe farther out we were going to get there, but I don't think it was fully sustainable. And the market has retrenched quite a bit on these cars. And so if there's been any car in the market that's retrenched, that's more modern, these cars have retrenched, and they've come back down. And so if we talk, let's talk top and bottoms on these cars. So again, driver quality cars, not world-class 0-mile cars or, unusual cars. 6-speed coupes. We don't want to talk about Tiptronics, have a different value.
Do we know if this is a 6-speed or 6-speed?
He said 6-speed. So right now, those 6-speed cars are trading for a low of about 52 to 55 to a high of about 95, give or take. And again, they're pretty quickly coming off that bottom and pretty quickly coming off that top. And the bulk of them now are 68 to 80, 82. So I look at this car, I'm going to pass and forgive the photos because I don't know if that's on monitor or not, but if it's well presented, I think an Orient Red over Natural Brown will bring a premium for that. It'll get a premium for the X50 package. And the miles are kind of right in that sweet spot. Presented well, that car in today's market should do 78 to 84.
What about the all-wheel drive part of that car? Is that a concern, or is that?
You're killing me, Vu.
Well, aren't you guys wondering the same thing?
Okay. I feel like people are going to hate me on this channel because I just tell it like it is. So here's what I'm going to tell you like it is.
That's why I asked the question. I could feel it. I could feel it.
So tired of people will call me and they'll go, oh, I can't have that all-wheel drive one. I mean, it's just steering. It's going to understeer and it's going to be so polluted. And it's just, Ferry Porsche rolled over in his grade. He never thought a Porsche would have all-wheel drive. It's just wrong.
I think I hit a nerve.
Yeah. If I hear one more person tell me that, it just drives me crazy. So if you know anything about the all-wheel drive system of these cars, they have a 95.5 torque split going down the road. So if you can feel that 5%, you are some sort of savant, first of all. And the other thing is it's a viscous coupling-based all-wheel drive system. So essentially, as the rear wheels start to slip, the viscous fluid heats up, it couples together, and you get torque split sent forward. So there's a couple things to know about that. One, that system is strictly mechanical. It really doesn't operate until there's already wheel slip, and it's very unobtrusive in its action. Now, the other thing that's happening, now these are 20-year-old cars. A huge portion of these cars that are viscous coupling all-wheel drive, it doesn't even work.
Oh.
I kid you not. Take your 993. So 993 was the first Carrera 4 that had viscous coupling based all-wheel drive. So take a 993 C4, a 996 C4, a 997 C4, and you can actually test them. And most of them don't even produce enough torque that you can't just hold I'm fairly strong, but you can literally, you can stop the wheel from turning just by doing it like up on your lift. Like, the viscous couplings wear out on them. And so a huge portion of these cars are not even functionally all-wheel drive as they sit. And so when people tell me, oh, I just can't have that car, I'm like, you are missing out. So yeah, there's a test you can find online to how to test your VC to see if it actually works. Or if you just want the really simplistic way, if you don't mind the rocks being flung up in your fender wells, go in like a gravel lot and stand on it and see if you get 4 tires dug into the ground. And you'll be shocked to find out oftentimes you won't. So there's my rant.
All right, so let's get his blood pressure down and bring up another car. Oh, this one's nice. This will make you happy. Okay, it's definitely the monitor because that car also looks very
This
pink,
looks like
but I know
a sample raspberry red, doesn't it?
That's a beautiful car.
Okay, so now this is an interesting car. Another car near and dear to my heart. This is a 964 Turbo. I believe this is a 91. Is that what this
is? A
91 or 92. It looks to be a 3.3
It is a 1991.
Turbo. Okay.
It's guards red with 83,000 miles.
Okay. So 964 turbos are a very interesting animal. So if we know anything about Porsche history, the 911 Turbo when it debuted in 1975 literally just flipped the world over. I mean, it was the fastest production car for years. I mean, nothing touched it. It was legendary. And they made that car all the way through 1989, and then Porsche announced they were not going to make that car with the 964 because they were developing a whole new turbo. Well, of course, we know the financial situation with Porsche was not real great, and so there was a lot of demand, and people said, well, where's my 911 Turbo? Where's my 911 Turbo? And so Porsche scratched their head and said, well, how do we satisfy people? So essentially what they did is they took the new 964 platform, and they took the old leftover 930 turbo engine and shoved it in the back. So there's just very, very minor changes. So it still used CIS mechanical fuel injection, all carried over from the 89 930 as the 3.3 turbo. So you can see the motor here, actually it's kind of fun. And so they made 315 horsepower. The thing that was cool about them was you got all the chassis improvements of the 964. So you got the new modern coilover suspension, you got anti-lock brakes. So they handled better, they stopped better, the HVAC worked better. But they still had the same characteristic of the outgoing 930, the very laggy motor, a pretty dated injection system where it had no sort of intelligence, if you will. So they just ran rich all the time, horrible fuel economy. But when that big single turbo kicked in,
Excitement.
oh my God. So again, rear wheel drive, so thank you. All the people that hate the all wheel drive cars. You have your rear wheel drive, single turbo, lots of lag, big fenders, kind of obnoxious and brawny and awesome, all wrapped in one piece. So great car. They were right at $100,000 when they were new. And the vast majority of them are optioned just like this car. So they came standard with what we call leather belt line, which is leather everything except for the dash. They all got the trip computer. About the only options you'll ever find. Sport seats were an option, limited slip differential, heated seats, and a few other things. But most of them are kind of the same. This is a very standard build, guards red, black, as you would expect. I think you said mileage was 83, something like that.
81, I think.
81. So before I go too deep into the values in this car, I'm going to talk about the one thing that kills me about these cars is that
Oh, 83, you're right.
in 93, Porsche introduced the car that looks almost the same, but they finally modernized the engine. So they took an engine now based on the 964 platform, and it was called the 964 3.6 Turbo. It looks basically the same. The only visual differences are it got Speedline wheels. These are replica Speedline wheels, so it looks like a 3.6 Turbo, but they would have come on Cup 1s. And they basically gave it red brake calipers and a little badge on the back that says Turbo 3.6.
Can I pause?
Yep.
How could you tell that those were replicas? They're not. They're not.
I think that they are. I'm going to vote that they are, but I could be wrong.
Manny knows the car.
Okay.
I was about to say, that was
I'm gonna have to argue with him about dinner, but to my eye, but I could be wrong.
It's a photo.
Yes, it's a photo. Yes, we'll go for that. But nevertheless, the thing that always holds these cars back is, I'll call it the Boxster S effect. If you own a 3.3 turbo, the very first question you get from every single person that walks up is like, oh, is it a 3.6? And as soon as you say
It's a 3.6.
no, people go, oh. Which is the stupidest reaction in the world, and it's got to be so frustrating. So I'm just here right now going to apologize to all 3.3 liter owners. They're fabulous cars, but I think that always holds them back somewhat. I would actually argue right now these cars are kind of a value in the market. 964s, if anything, have stayed every bit as strong as they have been. These 3.3 liter turbos have actually softened a skosh from the absolute top, even though 3.6 turbos have not. So the delta has only gotten bigger. So let's talk a little bit about the values on these cars. So, because most of them are fairly standard build, so we're going to use, from our value, is going to be kind of standard build cars. So, white, red, black interior, standard options, mid mileage. The car appears to present quite well.
Can I add a detail that might affect your pricing? From the photo with the suspension components, this car must have been dry ice cleaned.
Yes.
And that's not cheap to do.
It depends on your market, but you're going to generally spend $1,500 to $4,000, depending on how intensive you go for doing dry ice. Dry ice.
Look how clean it is! Wow.
Dry ice is actually, I would argue, kind of came on the scene and was kind of the thing to do, and it's kind of lost favor. I think now people are coming back and saying, oh, it's not as original. I don't agree with that sentiment, but it doesn't seem as prevalent as it was even 24 months ago.
Yeah.
But the other thing on this car, it's got a few mods, like some suspension. It's got a different front lip on it. It has the Speedline or Speedline replica, depending on your perspective, wheels. These wheels actually, I would say, add value because, again, it's that cognitive thing. When you say 964 turbo, people picture it on these wheels. Mm-hmm. So I think that's actually a good thing from its value, particularly if you still have its original Cup 1 wheels. So let's talk about what the market on these cars has done. So bottom of the market for one, again, that's palatable. It's not amazing. The bottom is about 165, and about the top, 2.25. And the bulk of them, you know, they're going to, again, come off the bottom, come off the top. The bulk of them are going to be between 180 and 200. This car's probably going to fall in that range. And that's a little bit off where they were, say, 18 to 24 months ago. At their peak, they were doing more like 230 to 250, 260. Now, interestingly enough, 3.6 turbo cars, that if this were the exact same car, same mileage and combination, you're going to add another 120 to 150 to that price for it being 3.6 turbo. Yeah.
For 0.3 liters.
Yeah, and the fact that when you go to Cars and Coffee, you can say yes.
Wow.
I don't need to say
Now,
yes
which
that badly.
car was in Bad Boys?
A 3.6 turbo.
Oh, that
Yeah.
makes it even worse.
Yeah.
Because they expect you to have the 3.6.
Yeah, but nevertheless, epically great car. And it has one of my favorite features about this car is, again, not denigrating my poor 993 turbo or wide body people, but it's the last wide body that Porsche also flared the front fenders. And that's why it looks so good. People focus on the rear fenders, but if you look, whether it be a M491 car or a 930 or one of these, they have a different front fender. People don't remember this. On the 993, for budget reasons, they said, nope, no wide front fender. They get a narrow front fender and a wide rear fender. This is better looking to me because you're muscular front and rear. This car didn't skip leg day, bro.
So because this is like one of the last iterations of the G-body, the 911 Turbo, and there's somewhat of a myth or whatever about it being 911 Turbos being widowmakers and difficult to drive. Is that prevalent in this particular year?
You get less noise about that. The suspension of the 964 is much more developed than the earlier torsion bar suspension. Now, what would have been really cool is if it ever had this iteration, but with the later 993 multi-link rear suspension. Because the 993 totally quelled out any of that behavior. These cars, you can get a little bit spooky, but you have to be doing something kind of stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we have a little bit of time to take some questions from the audience. If you raise your hand, and I'll repeat the question. So your question.
Or entry level.
Well, let me repeat the question. So he's talking about 944s. There's a lot of them, but the range of price. What are your thoughts on the 944?
I love 944s. I personally own a 944 Turbo 86 Kalahari beige metallic, spectacular car. Maybe I'll have it at Lake Placid next year. The thing that's interesting about 944s is they suffer from the same issue that 914 suffered from, but Boxsters suffer from, which is this idea that because they were more entry level, that they're somehow less than, which is absolutely not true. 50-50 weight balance. They've got very, very good build quality. They're a very comfortable car to drive. Their HVAC works well. They sound good. They're torquey. Lots of great things we can say about them. The one challenge they have is because their market values historically have been fairly low, they still have Porsche maintenance costs. And the one thing I'll say about German cars that's an interesting thing I've learned over the years, and this isn't just exclusive to Porsche, is German cars are kind of fascinating to me because you can get in a German car that's poorly maintained and been neglected forever, and it will still generally run, drive, stop, and steer, but nothing will be right with the car, right? And these cars you can find on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for $2,500. The problem with those cars, of course, is that you could never feasibly spend enough money to get them up to par. And so what I think you're going to find on the 944 market is this bifurcation where a huge segment of the cars are never going to be worth anything because you could just never get them up to speed. There's not many people that know how to work on transaxle cars. The parts are expensive. And so they're just going to be parts cars or just, be on that end of the market. But there's another huge portion of the segment of the population, people my age and younger, that say, my dad had this car, or I always left it after this car off 16 candles, or even better, kids my son's age love the pop-up headlights and the box flares. I get more attention in my 944 Turbo than I do in my same period bike 3.2 Carrera driving down the road. And it's all from enthusiasts under age 30. So I think it's got some legs. So I think what you're going to find is you're going to have this weird market where you can still buy a 944, I bet you in 10 years, for $5,000 or $6,000. but good ones will be worth a lot more because you just couldn't ever get it there. So if you look at normally aspirated 944s, about the top of the market for really world-class cars right now, still 40 grand. I mean, and that would be a really rare case. And you can buy a pretty good car in the 15 to 22, 23 grand range. 44 turbos get a lot more street cred, and those cars do quite a bit better. Those are going to be for the bottom end of driving cars, 15, 16 to 25, 26, 27, and really nice cars might do 60 or 70. There's been a couple of 944 turbos that have cracked the six-figure mark, but they're generally like delivery mileage kind of stuff. I would encourage people. I love 944s. So God willing, mine will show up at Lake Placid next year. So
Once you get to the 944 Turbo Edge, when does the 968 kind of come in? Like, when do you trade off?
968s are forgotten cars. I also have a 968, a Midnight Blue 93. Fabulous car. I think it's a gorgeous car. Those kind of, during COVID, we started seeing some pretty big numbers on them, and they've retrenched. In fact, a couple good cars recently sold. Again, not world class, but honest cars you could come to this event and use with pride. A couple have come down in that 25 to 35 range. It's a lot of car for not huge bucks. And actually, I'll have to whisper this, but it's a better daily car than a 944 Turbo. 944 Turbo is a better road car. Outright speed, you can make more power, but the 968 is a torquey motor. It's really good.
There you go. Next question, raise your hand. Go ahead. The first car we looked at, you said you could do a few things. What would you do to it?
Maybe
you can bring
Dave
it,
pull
Dave.
photos up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the very first thing, again, this is a personal choice thing, but the very first thing I would do with this car is I'd put the original headlights back on. That would go a long way, because again, it's that cognitive piece. This car, I probably, to maximize value, this is one of those rare circumstances I might go non-original. I would probably put Cup 1 wheels on this car. In my experience, they sell a little bit better on Cup 1 wheels. And then detail type items. So if you want to turn the interior photos on, Damon. Okay, so I mean, these are just some really simple things I noticed on the interior. Cashmere interiors generally don't do as well as black interiors. So one of the things I generally would do on a car like this to tone down the interior is I would probably do a set of black mats or black cocoa mats or something just to visually sort of tone down the tan. And of course, just detail, getting that kind of stuff out. Little stuff, like it's missing the cover over the little door pin switch. I just always try to look at cars and say, what's going to draw someone's eye? Because most people's attention span is about that long. So, little stuff.
Next question. Go ahead. Oh, put me on the spot.
Yeah, the PCA
The question
Club
was,
Coupe.
what are your thoughts and predictions on the 70th anniversary Club Coupe that was just presented here at Parade?
Yeah, so here in the Porsche world, not just with PCA, we love to feel special.
We do.
And so the fact there's only going to be 70 examples of that car, there's always going to be this exclusivity piece. Again, I always laugh. I think in my earlier presentation, I made people raise their hand and I said, any of you told us stories in the elevator when you're talking to someone where you had to sort of say, you make your car just a little bit more special than it really is, right? Well, I just have this 991, but, right? And you always have to tell some kind of story that makes it stand out. I think that's the thing you get with that car. It's a really well done package. Now, in terms of how I think it's going to be valued in the future, you can look to the 50th coupes and the 60th coupes as some example. Let's look at the 60th because that market's pretty clear. If you took a 60th car and you compared it to another 2016 GTS equipped very similar with similar mileage, the Club Coupe Premium is not that big. It's somewhere maybe in the neighborhood of 10 or 20%. So people will pay a little bit for that exclusivity, but it's not a 2X or anything like that. I think what you're going to find very similar in the future on this next car, hopefully this doesn't upset anyone with PCA, but I think what you'll find is that it will trade for a similar value for a similarly equipped Carrera T with a slight premium for that kind of rarity piece. So I wouldn't put it in your 401k.
But the person that owns it will always, they know publicly that it is a special.
There'll be that person in the elevator. Well, I won this in a raffle. And I'm like, well, you won the right to spend a lot of money in a raffle.
Right.
Yeah.
Or they have the 50th, the 60th, and the trifecta.
I think there's someone back there that just might try to do that. Yeah.
The question was, does dry ice affect the value of older cars or newer cars alike?
Is that what you said, older or newer, or just?
Oh, a lower value
Okay.
or higher value.
Okay, so dry ice. So dry ice kind of appeared on the scene almost overnight a few years back. No one really knew about it, and the only people that had chassis that looked perfect were the neurotic people that go to PCA Concours.
True.
And then someone, I don't know, 5, 8 years ago made a YouTube video where it looks like you pass this magic wand over the bottom of your car, and 19 seconds later, it looks like the hand of Jesus cleaned it, right? And we've all watched that video and gone, wow, that is sexy. I'm here to tell you there's a couple things. One, I've talked to Jesus. He's told me he doesn't do any dry icing, so you're out of luck there. But it doesn't work that fast. It isn't that easy, nor is it as clean as it would appear in that video. So just make sure you set your expectations on that. To do, for example, take a 3.2 Carrera, to do one of those fairly well, your dry ice guy is going to spend 6 to 12 hours, not the 30 seconds you see on YouTube. But what happened initially is the first few people that came to market with those cars, people just marveled. And I would argue the cars brought a big premium because people looked at that picture and went, whoa, that's what it must have looked like the day it was built. No, it didn't.
Looks better.
It didn't look like that. So that was one thing. So sort of the first movers, I think, had a big bump. And then everyone started doing it, and then it became the standard. And it was like, oh, it's not so much a value add. It's like, well, you have to do it if you want to sell at this tier. And you saw that. And then you started getting some pushback. And some people saying, well, wait a minute. Am I removing rust proofing from the car? And that became the noise. Cosmoline is a rust proofing material. I would argue that's not true because it was applied as a shipping protectant. Porsche's warranty for corrosion in period was not based on Cosmo being applied or not. Had it been, they would have done it more uniformly. It was a shipping protection because it was a salt water. They were open boats when they shipped these cars across the ocean. So I'm of the opinion if you want to remove it and it makes you feel good, knock yourself out. Now, I will say that Cosmoline does protect, like, maybe what I'll call non-invasive corrosion. So things like the fasteners and those kinds of things, they look better under Cosmoline than they did without. So if you live in an environment where you've got any kind of road salt or you're going to drive in any negative condition, I probably wouldn't dry ice a car. I have several of my cars dry ice, but not my daily driver stuff. And the other thing to know is that people think that a car, what it'll do is it'll just reveal what's there. It doesn't clean up what is already happening. So if your car already has surface corrosion and stuff and you clean it, it will be a clean car with surface corrosion. It won't magically reverse corrosion. So.
Does that apply the same? I've seen a lot of videos of laser cleaning now. Oops, did I hit a nerve?
It's all slippery slope, right? So laser cleaning would attempt to take off things that are caused by the effect of heat or some combination of heat and caustic chemicals. So for example, exhaust manifolds. So now all of a sudden you dry ice a car, it just takes off the dirt and the Cosmoline. But if, for example, your exhaust manifolds have corrosion, well then they look rusty and they stand out. So someone's like, now what do we do? Oh, we get a laser and we scrub all that off there. At what point do you stop?
And to the normal person, they're going, we're doing all this work underneath the car.
And then there are people who are afraid to drive the car, and we're about driving the cars. So,
Yeah. All right, maybe a few more questions. Go ahead.
I started noticing some of the
How do you value singers, outlaws that are coming to market?
Okay.
In the secondary
yeah.
market.
Okay, so as it relates to any car that doesn't have a very robust sort of data set, anytime you have a very custom car of any kind, then it's sort of a market space of one. If you take someone like Singer, it's a little bit different because there's been enough secondary sales that we can start establishing some trends around what those look like. So we'll set Singer aside per se, we'll come back to it, and let's just talk about customized cars in general. When it comes to customized cars, the biggest thing, how they're valued, a lot of it is how well did the builder execute to what's currently in vogue? And so there's kind of a common playbook, if you will, right now on, Restomod or custom 911s, which is currently in vogue, which is different than what was in vogue, say, 10 years ago. Like 10 years ago, the most common custom thing was to make a 73 RS recreation or to backdate, a G model into a long bit. Those are kind of out of favor now, right? The times have moved on. Now we're building like ST clones or, kind of the big displacement EFI, wide fender, RSR kind of vibe. That's kind of in vogue. And so the closer your car is into the current Vogue statement, the better it's going to do. The other thing is the closer it sort of is aligned with well-known names or brands in the market, the better. So, for example, if your uncle, used to build race motors for Andile, but no one ever knew who he was, but he did an amazing job building the motor, that's going to have a different value than if it's an Ed Pink motor done in the car, right? Because people know, well, Pink was doing motors for Singer, so there's some value there. So some of it comes down to that nuance. And then, unfortunately, a lot of the cars are sold in venues where we really can't vet the quality of the build. If I were advising a customer, if you're going to buy a custom car of any kind, absolutely, if there's ever a time that you want an expert to look at the car, do it. Because all those cars look great in photos, and execution's everything in terms of panel fit and how it's all put together and drivability. And so really what you have to do with custom cars is you have to put them to market, and the market will tell you. But again, the closer you are to current Vogue, the more brand name sort of aligned you are, and probably the least offensive you are. Like sometimes people will go out too far, right? So if you kind of stay in that lane, you'll do just fine. It used to be that custom cars always got punished. But for example, long hood cars, so the 69 to 73 cars, are currently very soft in the market. But the custom versions are not. So for the first time ever, the custom ones in that era are likely doing better than the all original cars. So as it relates to Singer, again, the first one that came to market, everyone was kind of like, well, what's going to happen? Now it's pretty well established. If you have a fairly standard build Singer product, you're going to pay somewhere between $850 and $1,100, depending on the exact build. I would argue the fatal flaw with buying a used Singer, nothing wrong with the car, is the coolest part of Singer is the process of like being involved and picking everything and spending 3 years thinking about it and dreaming about it and talking about it. And if you just buy someone else's, you just have someone else's Singer. That to me is not that interesting. So, yeah.
All right, one more question. Any more questions? Raise your hand. All good? Oh, there you go. Go ahead. All right, so for those of you who have 986s, 996s, 997s,
Yep.
987s, and you go in and turn on your fan because it's hot outside and you get a face full of foam.
Yes.
There are fixes. Some will say are proper fixes, and there are some hacks.
Yep.
They all have it, so how does that affect value? I think eventually they all have that problem. How do you deal with that?
So a couple things. It's common. If you aren't familiar with the problem, essentially the ductwork in these cars, Porsche sealed the various ducts with basically a foam tape. And then they also, I'm not really sure why they did this. I'm not an engineer, but there are these, what they call blend doors, because you have hot air coming from the heat and the AC coming in, and they basically, a door separates that and blends together to create whatever temperature you want. There are these aluminum doors that have these big holes in them, and then Porsche covered them with this foam tape. Over time, particularly in more humid climates, that will break down. Yeah, so if you're here, like Florida cars are epidemic for it, that eventually will fail, and then a couple things are going to happen. So the thing that you as a user notice is that you turn it on high on a hot day to clear it out, and things are blowing in your eyes, and you're constantly vacuuming your car because there's foam everywhere, which is quite embarrassing. That's the number one thing. The other thing is that over time, your HVAC will stop functioning very well. You'll never get really, really hot air, and you'll never really get cold air because they'll never blend correctly. So yes, eventually you have to fix it because you'll have mornings you can't clear your windshield. Or on a really humid morning, you'll get all that frost forming at the base of your window. So the way you repair it, there's a couple things. So the problem is you have to access it both from the back and from the front. So the actual correct way to do it is actually you basically disassemble the darn near whole dashboard. I would argue that even for me, who's neurotic, I'm going to tell you how I fixed mine. The easiest thing to fix is from the back. So you basically pull the front cowl off, pull the battery out, you pull out the wiper motors. It's actually not very complicated. And you pull out the heater core. Now, Porsche did this. If you pulled a heater core on a 996, it's one of the few times, God bless Porsche, it's the easiest heater core you'll ever pull out in your life. It has two quick release clips, It's at the highest point. You put a little rag down. It hardly leaks any coolant. You can have the heater core out in 20 minutes. Fabulous. They're about $120. You put a new one in. But when you pull it out, what you can then do is you can stick your head in there and you can actually see those blend doors. And you'll see now they look like naked aluminum and there's a little bit of that foam stuck to it.
Swiss cheese.
Yeah, you literally just clean the rest of that foam off. You get your shot back out. You shot back out as best as possible. Then you take like a compressed air gun and you start blowing it through the vents and more will blow. And do that for probably an hour. Try to get as much out as possible. And then you take literally duct tape. Not the stuff you buy now, but DUCT, like we use for HVAC. You tape up the doors. You'll cut your hand up a little bit, so hopefully you have small hands. You get in there, you do that. That'll do probably 80% of it. The problem is you still have to access it from the front side. So there you pull your radio, your climate control unit out. Now this is where it gets controversial. But what I did on mine is I just took an X-Acto knife and I cut the front of that vent. No one will ever see it. And then you kind of peel it back and then you do the same repair and then you peel it back up and then you just take a little plastic welder and you put some heat on it and it molds back together. So if someone goes in my dash, they'll see two little, like my dash had surgery or my vent had surgery. Mm-hmm. And now mine works good as new and I have no foam. So yeah, probably 3-hour job, 4-hour job. That's not particularly technical.
Very common.
Yeah,
Very
so
common.
that's a long answer, but it's worth fixing because like my Boxster, it was more than anything, I had no heat in the wintertime. So it's driving me crazy.
Guess what? It's at the top of the hour.
We're at the end of the hour,
So I hope you all enjoyed it. Nathan, as always, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Enjoy the rest of Porsche Parade.
Yeah, thank you.